This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we are back. Welcome to Glove Fists. My name is Frank Latirzo, former writer, full-time observer, joined by former 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association of America, smiling Jack Hirsch, who can say he one-upped me this weekend because for the first time since I think Columbus discovered America, he got a fight right that I got wrong.
Yeah, you're always reluctant to give credit, and you have a...
You called it, Jack. I missed it. I missed it.
That's okay. I don't mind. I wasn't even going to gloat about it. I'm smiling because this is going to be a fast-paced hour. I mean, we have all the fights to talk about this past weekend, and then at 7:20, Christy Martin's coming on. And if you haven't seen her movie in the theaters, I know you saw it, Frank. I saw it, the movie Christy. Watch it. Okay, it's not just a boxing story, it's a life story, it's an inspirational story, but we're going to talk about it later. But the fight that you're talking about, Frank, is Devin Haney and Brian Norman. And I'm not going to gloat because when the fight was first made, I picked Brian Norman, but I changed my prediction after I gave it enough thought. And I changed my prediction because I knew Brian Norman just wasn't that good. He scored a highlight reel knockout in his last fight before this in Japan, and Devin Haney we thought might be a bit shell-shocked, even though the Ryan Garcia loss was taken off his record. The fact is they did fight in the ring, and it didn't go well for Haney, that fight going down several times, but I gave it some thought, and Devin Haney's just better. But with that said, I don't think it was as one-sided as people made it out to be. Brian Norman did win some rounds. He did win
after the fourth round. It was closer. Well, Jack, I'll give you the credit.
It wasn't one-sided at all. Haney won the way I thought he would for the most part, and we move on from there. But is Devin Haney a generational talent? And that's what Bill Haney said right before the fight. Devin's a generational talent. It's possible that's where he's eventually going to wind up. Because if you look at the competition in the welterweight division, he could beat the Mario Barrios and the Rolly Romeros and the Louis Crocas, the other 3 belt holders, all on the same night, perhaps.
Well, Jack, I'll give you credit because you were pretty, at the end when you picked Haney, you were pretty confident. I made a mistake on 2 parts. One, I thought the residual from the fight with Ryan Garcia was more so than it turned out to be. And I overrated Haney. I knew Haney was the better boxer. I just didn't think that Norman would allow him to box. I thought he'd make him fight more. I thought his strength and power would be more of a factor in the fight. It wasn't. And Jack, really threw me off how big Haney looked at the weight. He looked like the bigger guy in there.
Yeah, he did. And when he knocked Norman down in the second round, it's more than a 10-8 round, Frank. We know the way things work in boxing. You don't only get that round 10-8, but it's like you're riding a wave. The judges are going to give you a number of close rounds after because you've given the impression that you're dominating that round. So after that, Haney wasn't doing anything special for the most part, especially in the later rounds. He wasn't doing.
No, as Joe Bergman said, it was a hug fest. Basically a hug fest.
In large part, he did what he had to do. Good performance by Haney on balance. This is what bothered me about Norman. In the later rounds of the fight, when he needed at least multiple knockdowns, if not a stoppage, needed at least a couple of knockdowns, to get back in it.
He had to fight with urgency, and he didn't.
But he, not so much he didn't fight with urgency. He wasn't punching with urgency. I didn't see him punching hard enough to shake Haney up with the blows he was throwing.
Jack, because the knockdown took his confidence. He went in there thinking he could walk over a guy that put him on his rear end with one shot, and I think that made him glove shy.
Did this remind you a little bit the knockdown in the second round of the second round knockdown of the Holmes-Cooney fight? Cooney was the big puncher, and he gets floored by a sharp right, and mentally that changes things. That the other guy,
Jack, that's a pretty good analogy. I think so, and it also gives the other guy more confidence. Holmes fought with a little more purpose after that, and was more sure of himself that he could actually hurt Cooney. And I think you kind of saw that with Haney too. Although Haney didn't close the way you would think after scoring a knockdown like that, he was more interested in celebrating and looking at Norman down and kind of trying to mock him a little bit. But look, I missed it. I wrote Haney off too soon. I overrated Norman against guys that weren't elite. And now looking at the picture now in the welterweight division, unless Boots Ennis comes back down to 147, which that's not going to happen, I don't know who I would pick to beat Haney at the weight right now.
There is no, well, he won't have a shortage of opponents if the money's there. There's Teofimo Lopez. There's Ryan Garcia. Again,
they've already said that's not going to happen, Jack.
But let me tell you, well, who said it's not going to happen?
Haney's father said they have no interest in fighting Garcia again.
If the money is there, it absolutely will happen without question, okay? We both know that. But what bothers me about Ryan Garcia, and I don't mean to make this about him, here's a guy that doesn't make the weight deliberately, gets busted for steroid use, gets suspended, comes back and is beaten soundly in the one comeback fight. And now he's getting a WBC world title fight. I mean, how ridiculous is that? It's like you're rewarding bad behavior. It's like a teacher rewarding the worst kids in the class. The good kids don't get any slack. The worst kids get rewarded. I mean, it's awful.
Jack, I was the worst kid in the class, and I never got rewarded. So things have definitely changed.
But
that's why people have a hard time taking this sport serious, because there's just so many things that are just crazy that happen. I mean, I see Timothy Bradley out there talking about, Oscar De La Hoya. Now, I know you can't take what he says seriously, but he's out there saying that Pacquiao will beat up Crawford. Please. I mean, who needs to hear that kind of crap?
I don't think he means right now. Maybe men at Pacquiao.
No, he's saying if they fought now, he thinks Pacquiao would be a problem. I just read before he came on the air that he thinks Pacquiao would be a real problem for Crawford. Is he out of his mind? Pacquiao at his best wouldn't touch Crawford.
That's ludicrous. Well, at Pacquiao's best, let's not necessarily write him off against Crawford, because
he had no shot, Jack.
I'm not saying he beat Crawford. Don't get me wrong. The Pacquiao who beat Miguel Cotto, I wouldn't be as dismissive of his chances as you are. That's what
I think he'd give him a run, Jack, but at the end of the day, he'd be stopped.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. Crawford at his very best.
And because Pacquiao can be hit, and we've seen him stop. So I have no interest in that fight. But what I'm saying is, Jack, it's hard to take the sport serious when you have jokers like that. And like you say, Ryan Garcia had a perfect chance, even though they took the win away, to capitalize on the stardom, because people still think of him beating up Devin Haney. And if I was Haney, that would bother me. I'd want to change that. But you know what?
Oh.
It's different today, Jack. And the other day, I saw a quote from John L. Sullivan. Now, he died in 1918. He died right before Dempsey won the championship. And you know what he was talking about? The guys of that era, Jack, how they had no guts. They had months and months to prepare for an opponent. They weren't, anybody, anytime. And he said they were businessmen. And think about that. He was saying that in 1918. And here we are in 2025. And it's the same thing. We look back at the past as grandiose, and we forget, what others said at the time. Just like you and I came up in the Ali era. And as we've discussed before, today everybody says Ali fought a great resume. Back then, they were saying his opponents weren't so great.
Right. Speaking, to link this on, speaking of one of the fighters who's willing to fight everybody, He was on the pay-per-view card from Saudi Arabia. I actually bought the pay-per-view card because this was a good one, Frank. David Benavidez stopping Anthony Yarde in 7 rounds. Now, I think Benavidez is absolutely beatable. Absolutely. But he just overpowers opponents. And I kind of feel right now, based on the fight against Yarde and some other fights with Benavidez, the best version of Dimitri Bivol would outpoint Benavidez. The best version.
That's the toughest fight for Benavidez, Jack. I agree.
Right, because he has endless stamina, Bivol. He could go a hard 12 rounds. I don't think Benavidez wears him down. Benavidez, he's just big and strong. It's not like he cuts the ring off. You just get tired of his physicality.
His work rate, and he throws all his punches with bad intentions. You can tell the guy likes to fight. That's why I think he would fare well against Beterbiev, because Beterbiev would bring the fight to him. And I just think at this point, Benavidez gets off better, and I think he puts his punches together. But Bivol would keep that jab in his face, would keep him, as Angelo Dundee liked to say, keep him turning. And we know Bivol has a chin, and we know Bivol will not get discouraged by a guy that's coming at him and putting pressure on him. That's the tougher fight, and I think it's a shame that they're not fighting next. But let's clear the deck with one thing, Jack. I hate to say this because I hate to say this about any fighter, but I think it's pretty clear. And you said this before I did, actually. I gave Canelo more credit, but I think it's obvious that Canelo really never wanted to go near Benavidez.
No, he didn't. I was thinking of Canelo the other day. Where does he go from here? He mentions he wants a Crawford rematch. And actually, Frank, that's the only logical fight for him at this point.
Jack, I said that before he fought Crawford. That's the only logical fight for both of them.
The rematch I'm talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah. I mean, if I'm Crawford, I'm happy to give him the rematch because I don't see exactly what's out there for Crawford at this moment that's going to be any more of a bigger fight still. And it'll be different. The first fight was considered a bit of a toss-up. Canelo was a slight favorite. For this fight, Crawford is going to be a very solid favorite. I think he's going to come in at 2.5 to 1, 3 to 1, or whatever the odds. But Crawford's going to be a clear favorite, regardless of what the number is.
Jack, here's why they have to fight again. Because if you're Canelo, you can't go down, even if you could make weight. You really can't go down and fight anybody. So if you're going to be at 168, if you yell for Benavidez, he would probably come down to fight you. And he's not going to go up to fight Bivol or Beterbiev because he knows they're not good matchups for him. So he really doesn't have many options, even though he's the name. If you're Crawford, Bruce is not on your radar. If you go down and fight one of the middleweight champs, we know that in boxing, once guys go up, how many guys have gone up and come back down and met success? Not too many.
Look at that, Frank. I'm looking at it business-wise. Canelo.
Well, I'm going to get to that, Jack. Yes, business-wise, he knows Canelo. He knows he can beat him. He knows it's huge money. He doesn't have to go down and wait. Everything is Canelo, right there.
Frank. I'm not talking Crawford. I'm talking Canelo. Crawford could.
But I'm saying it's the best fight for both of them. That's why I think it'll happen. No matter where you turn, it leads to each other.
But for Canelo, there are only 2 fights out there that can be mega events. Benavidez, if he can make Benavidez come down to weight, it's still a major event. Okay, very intriguing. Or Crawford rematch, it's a big event because Terence Crawford has entered the territory now that he's transcended boxing a little bit, where sports fans are going to want to watch him. There'll be a big event if he fights a name opponent like Canelo again.
Right, but he's must-see now.
But Canelo can't fight the Edgar Belangas anymore. No one gives a darn, and it'll pay him low money. Had he beaten Crawford, he could continue with the Edgar Belangas,
No, that took it off the table. But let me run this by you. If you're Canelo, and you just said it, his 2 best options are either Benavidez or Crawford. What route would you go? And let me just give you this.
Because Crawford isn't going to hurt him. He'll lose the decision. He'll be semi-competitive, Canelo. He'll win 2, 3 rounds or whatever, and he'll leave the ring, not disgraced.
Okay, but the other side of that is there's been a lot of talk that Benavidez had a hard time making 175. If Canelo brings him down to 168, if you're Canelo, you could say, I make his way in close to the fight. He can't gain a lot of weight in between. He could see that as an advantage for him. Also, I agree with you. I'd probably go with Crawford because I know I'm not going to get stopped. But he might have a better chance to beat Benavidez.
But that's fun because Benavidez is going up to cruiserweight to fight Gilberto Ramirez. He's all set with that. That's supposed to take place,
which will make it even harder for him to get back down ever.
He's not going down to 168 again. I think Benavidez realizes it's too big a chore.
Jack, I saw a couple guys talk about Benavidez fighting Usyk. Are they crazy?
That's getting a little out of hand. I mean, anyone could throw any fight out there.
I think it was Jim Lampley who actually posted that on X, Jack, that he thought Benavidez would have a shot with Usyk.
But let me tell you, in 1994, after Roy Jones beat James Toney, I went on the USA Tuesday Night Fights. They had a segment called Fighting Words, and I had that segment 1 minute to talk about whatever I want. And I proposed a Roy Jones-George Foreman fight, saying why Jones would beat Foreman, blah, blah, blah. And it created such a buzz. Ring Magazine picked up on it. People were contacting me, talking all over about it. It created a buzz.
Jack, I just want to know how you kept it to a minute. That's what I want to know.
Well,
how did you keep it to a minute? That had to be hard.
They cut me off while I was still talking. But, I don't even dignify Benavidez against Usyk. Let's stop that. Come on, guys.
No, he would never beat him. Never. It's a joke. But again, boxing has become that kind of a sport. Like, I mean, look at all the publicity and all the stuff about Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua. I have no interest in that fight. None.
Well, we got like 3 minutes till Christy Martin. Now our producer Brian, when she comes in the studio, let us know if she's on. Then 7:20. Hopefully she's backstage. But Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua, Frank, we're going to talk about it more as we get a little closer. Do you think Jake Paul could last till the middle rounds?
Anthony Joshua has the mindset. Jack, if he has the mindset he had for Ngannou and he hits him like he did Ngannou, no, I don't think so. But that's the problem with these fights, Jack, because we just don't know what is what.
Well, we don't know what type of chin Jake Paul has. We really don't. He might be a very tough kid that's going to be able to absorb some blows and fight very conservatively. And if Jake Paul can last till the 7th round, let's say, and then the ref stops it, he goes down a couple of times.
That's a loss for Joshua, my concern, Jack.
I'm not people would get over it. You want to know why? Look what happened with Fury and Ngannou. We've had 2 fights like this. Mayweather-McGregor. McGregor exceeded expectations, lasting till the 10th round. And Ngannou and Fury, and that was a fiasco. He nearly beat Fury.
But Fury was undefeated at the time, and he had a cachet to trade on. And Mayweather, it was the end of his career, and he was much older than McGregor. We know Mayweather didn't really take it serious. Joshua is still a real fighter, trying to get more acclaim. I think with his stoppage losses and the way he's going out in a couple fights, I really think if Paul lasts to the 3rd round, it's a blemish on Joshua.
Well, not 3rd round. No, Joshua might.
I think that, Jack. He should not be able to. If Ngannou can't go 2 rounds with Joshua, there's no way Jake Paul should, because we know Ngannou killed Jake Paul.
It's going to be when Paul enters the ring against Joshua. He is going to be a legitimate heavyweight in all probability. He's weighed 221 before, so he will be a legitimate heavyweight.
He's a big, strong kid, no doubt.
He knows how to use the ring. He can box a bit and jab. Obviously, he's not nearly on Joshua's level. and Paul can whack a bit. I'm playing devil's advocate. If Paul comes over the top and he hits Joshua flush with a right hand, Joshua doesn't take the greatest whack, as Angelo.
If Paul can hurt Joshua, Jack, that is an embarrassment. Okay, I'm sorry, it is. A guy at that level should not be able to beat a guy as big
I got another
and
fight,
strong as Anthony Joshua.
What Pete Rademacher first fight challenged Floyd Patterson for the world heavyweight title and knocked Patterson down and gave him some rounds. It happens, Frank.
The size difference wasn't there, Jack, and Rademacher was an Olympic medalist, and that's like a 4, 5, 6 round pro. And Patterson has been down 20 times in his career. So knocking Patterson down is a little different than putting AJ down.
But there's something about Anthony Joshua that's a little bit off. Even Andre Ward.
I agree with that.
One fight heavyweight he wanted to fight. He no other heavyweights. Something about Joshua, he always felt Ward, he could beat Joshua. And that's the fight he would have taken. And it just didn't come off. So, it's
but
what it
back
is.
then, Joshua was a different guy, Jack, than he is today. He's 34 years old today. A 27-year-old Joshua that fought Klitschko would mutilate Ward and Jake Paul one after the other. He's not that same guy.
If Christy Martin's backstage, our producer Brian, bring her on, I'll say it again. Maybe, she hasn't come to the studio yet, but we're waiting for Christy Martin to come on. You wonder what Jake Paul is doing. He's switching up. He goes from Tank Davis, a little guy, a lightweight,
a midget to a giant,
heavyweight. So he's gone from 135-pounder to a guy who's close to 250. What the heck is he thinking? He's all over the place. But
he has nothing to lose, Jack. Nothing to lose. Well, no pressure at all.
Eventually, Paul has to cash out, take up the ultimate chance. And this is it. We talked about Canelo before, and Paul has been mentioning Canelo. And you kind of wonder with Canelo, that's a high-profile fight that Canelo would win. Okay?
I can't see Canelo going that way now. Not after losing to Crawford, a guy smaller than him.
It's an event. It's an event. And he would make Jake Paul make weight under 185 or something, under 180. I don't know. It would be an event. But
here we are. We're talking about these gimmick fights. I just wish we would talk about there were real fights that were happening. There are so many, if you look at the lightweight division, there are so many good fights out there for Shakur Stevenson, and we're probably not going to see them, Jack, because these guys want to be on TV and they want to be YouTube stars, and for old school guys like us, it's disheartening.
Shakur Stevenson has matured in his attitude over the years. And by the way, going back to Devin Haney very quickly, kudos to Devin Haney after the fight. He was a real gentleman, said the right things, praised Brian Norman. Devin Haney conducted himself like a champion in the immediate aftermath. You can't say it about his father who wanted to fight in the ring.
Hey, Jack, the biggest Eagles fan in the world, Joe Bergman, wants us to talk about Bam. Bam is one of the best fundamental fighters in the game. He's on everybody's pound-for-pound list, Joe. I didn't happen to catch him this time out, but I was very confident that he was going to win. You and Jack can probably talk more about that fight to me because I missed that one.
Because in all the previews, they were saying that was going to be the fight of the night, him and Fernando Martinez. That was the fight of the night. That's all I heard about, how action-packed it was going to be. Well, the fight was so boring. Boring like anything. Bam controlled it. The first round, Bam was cautious. He probably lost the first round. But then he completely dominated. He toyed with his opponent and then knocked Martinez out for the count.
He's a great technical boxer, and he can punch.
He made it look so easy. So easy. And Bam's a 115-pounder. I don't see why he can't fight Inoue. I don't want to hear Inoue is 2 divisions over him. 2 divisions is what, 7 pounds? That's all it is. I mean, some people say, oh, that's a lot. I'm not saying it doesn't mean anything, but come on. Frank, in the past 118 pounders, bantamweights, would routinely move up to featherweight 8 pounds, 126, and they were expected to.
Back in the 40s and 50s, right? But that hasn't happened. That hasn't happened since the 70s, Jack, where guys would
Another
make that
champion,
jump in one class.
Fighting Harada, arguably the greatest Japanese fight in history, moved up from 118 to 126. I mean, they do it all the time. I mean, we talked about Pacquiao before. Look at all the weight divisions he moved up. He did it over a good number of years. Some people say Pacquiao is a greater fighter than Mayweather based on him moving up all the divisions. As much respect as I have for that. Okay, Christy Martin's there backstage. If we could bring her on. Hey, Christy.
Hey, how are you?
Pretty good.
Hi, Christy.
You weren't coming on. Now, Christy, do we call you're known as Christy Martin with your fighting days, but you prefer to be called Christy Salters or Christy Salters Martin?
Christy Martin is fine.
Okay. Christy, we both saw the movie, Frank and I, independent of one another. We loved it. And the people who haven't seen the movie, Christy, they don't know what they're missing. It's a great, great movie that goes beyond being a boxing movie. It's an inspirational story for sure.
I mean, that was the whole point of doing the movie, was to it's a human story. It's about being the underdog. It's about dealing with domestic violence. It's about dealing with sexuality, a little drug addiction. I mean, there's so many things here in that hopefully as people leave the theater, there's some inspiration, a little bit of that, hey, if she can do it, I can do it, kind of attitude.
Christy, I followed your career, and there was a lot of things I didn't know. Some of the stuff I read in the news that, most people knew on the outside. I got to tell you this. You're a badass. You really are. In so many ways. My fiance and I came out of that movie. Now, I'm a boxing junkie. I'm 67 years old. I followed this sport since I was 5. Okay. And when the movie first came out, I wasn't sure I wanted to see it because I said, well, I saw her fights. I know who she is.
Right.
But my fiance read an article about the movie in the Wall Street Journal. And my fiance does not like boxing. She doesn't like any kind of combat sport. And she goes, we have to go see this movie. So I said, okay, great. I don't have to talk you into seeing a boxing movie. Let's go. We go see the movie. And I didn't tell her anything about your past, other than you fought on Tyson's undercard, you were a big puncher and whatnot. And we both came out of that theater with tears in our eyes. I mean, I wish that the promotions were a little bit more informative, because Christy doesn't say, it's just not your story. And it's like, if you're not a boxing fan, it might not gravitate you. But I think this thing, once it gets more exposure, it's going to catch fire, because there are so many elements to your life. It's just unbelievable. And the respect I had for you before, it's just grown in leaps and bounds as to the type person you are. And let me just, before I go too far, let me just say this. Sydney Sweeney, I was saying to Wendy the whole time, I says, she throws her punches just like Martin. She looks just like her throwing the punches. I couldn't believe it.
Well, let me tell you, that was one of the important things to both the director and to me and to Sydney Sweeney, that, the punches, the fight scenes look real. She had those girls were hitting her. She was hitting the girls. It was intense. The fight scenes were intense. And like the stunt doubles that were playing, well, not doubles like for Sydney, but the girls that were playing the opponents, I mean, they were badasses. They were everybody that worked on this movie, they realized it's not a boxing movie, it's a human story movie. It's so much bigger than a sports movie, and really we all hope that we help so many people get out of whatever situation they might be in.
Yeah.
Are you happy with the I'm sorry, Jack. I didn't mean to talk.
Frank. No, go ahead, Frank.
2 things. Did you have oversight over at least a lot of the important things because I watched the documentary today that you did in 2021, and then I saw that after the movie, and it kind of went. It was sort of like, everything fit. So my questions are: did you have oversight on that? And the other question is, were you happy with the way it was presented in your mind, how you saw it before you saw the screening?
Right. Well, I asked Mira Fox, who was the main writer. She and Dave wrote the script together. I just said to her over and over, please don't Hollywoodize my life, because that was my big fear. They're gonna take my story and make it some dramatic, sensationalized,
It didn't
bull
need it.
crap. That Mira said to me, Christy, there's enough crazy shit that's happened in your life. We don't have to do that. And so I mean that was kind of funny, but true. And I appreciate the script. I think it was on point. And if you saw the documentary, you can see that there really isn't a lot of things, that's not the thing in the movie. There was a few things out of order, like, because that's just how the movie had to progress. Um, but everything was in there. This is what it is. We didn't have to make up anything. There had to be no fillers. There was good stuff that they had, and it's lessons, it's life lessons over and over every scene.
Yeah, Christy, I don't know whether I'm sure you remember this. I was on the board of directors of the American Association of Professional Ringside Physicians.
Oh,
And but let me explain. I mean, this is a sensitive area, obviously. The night of the banquet, you sat 2 seats from me for the night. And of course, the person sitting next to me, obviously, it was Jim, I can't say anything bad. And I mean, I want to see the worst things about him, but I think the worst things about him. So I noticed your behavior that night, that something was off. And it was the only time I'd ever been near the two of you. And I didn't talk to you that night, but he was talking to me nonstop next to me. And I noticed the way you were like clinging onto his hand like a little scared kid that night. And I knew there was something off. There was some type of abuse. I could tell from a distance, but I couldn't put my finger on it. That something was off because the way you were clinging onto his hand, then, and that was not long after, he made the attempt on your life. And the lead up to it in the movie, the reality of the movie was, it was real life. But what the people out there should know with the movies, things are built up at Hollywood, but correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, this was real life abuse. As bad as it seemed in the movie, that's what really took place with you.
Oh,
am I correct?
The movie is just a small percentage of what really happened. I mean, obviously, the worst thing was the shooting and stabbing, but the emotional and financial, the isolation, the stalking. There were so many things that happened, not even considering the shooting and stabbing, and that's what I want people to know about domestic violence. It isn't always just about the bruises. It's all the things that lead up to. That's usually how it ends or where it progresses to. But I want people to recognize before it gets that far. These things are all domestic violence.
And by the way, Lisa is just as nice in person as on the movie, because I'm a former president of the Boxing Writers Association of America, and we named the Female Fighter of the Year award after you, the Christy Martin Award. And when you showed up a few years ago with Lisa, I remember the guy, my buddy who succeeded me as president, Joe Santalaquido, and the event coordinator, Gina Andriola, said, stay and talk with Lisa. So I had about 15 minutes with her while they were taking her around. Such a lovely person. I mean, just an absolute pleasure to be around and talk to.
Thank you. Yes, she's good people. She's she's a great businesswoman. She was a great fighter. She's actually in the Women's Boxing Hall of Fame. So she's was a world champion. But the thing about Lisa, that she has like great compassion and she wants to help everybody. And that's what I sometimes say, Lisa, you can't help everybody. But she wants to, and which is good with us, because she also wants to make sure that I'm helping the people like the domestic violence people. She just wants to help people that sometimes work for her, and they all want something. And I'm like, you got to stop this. But she's good.
Christy, one of the parts of the movie that really got me was the scene where there was a get together at your house and you went outside, you pulled your mother aside to talk to her, to try to tell her what was really going on. How frustrating was that for you? The fact that you knew this guy was a scoundrel, but he was such a clever sucker that he manipulated your family and held things over your head to get to you. And the fact that you couldn't reach your mother, how frustrating was that? And what would you tell someone in that same position that's being manipulated by somebody like that, but they already put laid the seeds that they're the good guy and they're not?
Well, it's tough. I mean, and with my mother, it just hurt so much because, you're with somebody in a situation like me, you're the victim, you're the abused, and you feel so isolated and so alone. You don't really know who to turn to. And it took me a lot of courage to have a conversation with her. And then when I didn't get the response from her that I needed, like, where do I go now? Because when you can't get it from your mother, then really who's gonna give it to you? So that's one of the things that I want people to understand and take away. Parents, take away from that. Don't let your kid try to reach out to you and you don't answer. Stay open-minded. I mean, my thing too is, would you rather your child be gay or laying on the bedroom floor bleeding out? I mean, come on, it should be no question. It's just,
But your relationship ended up, that turned around with your mother, right?
Well, my mother passed in February, and I worked really hard with her I did a lot of talking with her and tried to understand why and how she had said and done some of the things she had done. Honestly, we never really got back on the same page, but you
didn't do anything wrong, Christy. A lot of people in society, they're kind of set in their ways, and they feel a social stigma that they shouldn't feel. So you never did anything wrong, You were.
She knows that, Jack.
Yeah, just so don't let there be any guilt feelings or whatever, because from all indications are you made the effort from your end, and sometimes things don't quite click, so perfectly. After the attempt on your life, you had a couple of fights. You weren't successful in those fights, but you were way past your prime anyway, regardless. Were those fights more therapy that you just had to get back in the ring to show you can get back in the ring? Because even though you lost the fights, it was a victory getting back in the ring.
Well, it was, and especially the first one against Dakota Stone. It was important to me to get win number 50, and I wanted to get win number 50 without Jim Martin being in my corner.
You did. You got it against him.
Amen. And it's taken me a long time to accept that. Getting up off the bedroom floor was win number 50.
Right.
But that night in LA, I broke my hand in the second round. The doctor stopped it in the 6th round with 50 seconds to go from my 50th win because I have a broken hand. And I just had been, 6 months earlier, I had been shot and stabbed, and you're going to stop this fight because my hand is broken. And I was jumping up and down begging him, please don't. But he did. And then after the fight was stopped and I went to Cedars-Sinai in LA, I had a stroke while they were fixing my hand. So it was like in 6 months, I had 2 life-changing events happen. And then after that, even though the doctors had told me I couldn't fight again, I knew that I had already have the brain scans and everything on file with California, so they won't need a new one. And I tried to slip in and fight Mia St. John, and I thought if I can beat Mia no matter what. But
you beat her previously. You beat her previously.
Yeah, but after having a stroke to try to get back in there, it was bad. It was a bad decision on my part.
The one fight that never came off, obviously, is the Riker fight for whatever
That was
reason.
I was going to go there
Yeah.
next.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Frank. Pick it up.
Well, I'm just saying, I always sensed that was something that bothered you, that you really wanted that fight because she was on the ascend like you were. And at some point, I think maybe even took a little of your steam away. And I think I always felt that you wanted that fight because that would have been really the coup de grace.
Well, I think that so many people, and a lot of boxing media, they looked at her physique and they were, oh wow, she's gonna roll through Christy. Well, I'm just a little white girl, coal miner's daughter from Southern West Virginia, and I'm a little pudgy, a little soft, but I could fight. I mean, I could fight and I could punch a little bit. I think that fight never happened because Lucia wasn't sure that she could win. And she never took a fight that she wasn't sure she was going to win.
And we know that goes on in boxing a lot.
Absolutely.
Fighters do that. Fighters know. They know where they can go and where they can't go.
Absolutely. Or where they should or where they shouldn't. And it was $1 million payday. So at that time, $1 million for a female fight was just wow, crazy, unheard of. So for her to pull out of the fight, the week of the fight, and then to never try to reschedule it. I called her people and I was like, look, we can let the $1 million thing go. Let's just do this fight. And I never got a response back.
Now, Christy, full disclosure, you weren't one of my favorite fighters because I thought you were arrogant, you were abrasive, and sometimes we don't take a liking to someone. We each have our favorites. You weren't one of my favorites. Now you are, by the way. I've come full circle as far as that goes. But this was kind of a little revealing. I was sitting with Harold Letterman at Madison Square Garden, and you walked by and was talking to him about Kathy Collins, who, by the way, Frank knows very well. And you were saying, no, before you fought Kathy Collins, and you were like praising her. And I'm saying, this isn't the Christy that I normally hear, who would be putting an opponent down. She's actually talking nicely about a potential opponent. Was it an act on your part, like being really abrasive, the things you would say?
Well, so, yeah, I mean, Christy Martin is a persona. And Jim Martin added a lot of fuel to that fire, a lot of fuel, and especially with the negativity that I brought forth to some of my opponents that were gay, and I said some pretty shitty things. But I do respect Kathy Collins. I respected most of my opponents. I mean, there was very few people that I fought that I truly had a dislike for.
I knew Kathy had no shot, Christy, because she couldn't tickle you. I knew that. I knew going in. It's like Kathy's a tough girl, but she didn't have the punch to make Christy change her expressions.
No. Christy always stayed a step ahead of her, but it was a competitive fight. It wasn't like a one-sided rout, Frank. No offense, Christy. I mean, Kathy hung in there.
But Jack, the point is winning and losing, and I knew Kathy, if she couldn't hurt Christy, had no shot, and I knew she couldn't make Christy do anything she didn't want to do.
Yeah, she was a good fighter. She had good skills, and I think she probably just didn't maybe have the same pop that I had, or I had a little dog in me, and maybe she didn't have as much dog.
You were ahead of your time, Christy, because you were a female fighter who could really fight. Some other female fighters during the era were pretty good fighters too, but female boxing has seemed to have come a long way in the years since, as far as more female fighters are more fundamentally sound. Would you agree with me?
Oh, absolutely. It's difference in night and day, but some of that comes from now these females are having amateur careers. So they're actually starting in the gym when they're 9 or 10 years old, and they're training right beside the guys and just getting that experience. I mean, so much of it is experience. I remember thinking, when I thought I got pretty good, was the night that I fought Lisa, and I was on Don King's show, Rockman versus Lennox Lewis rematch, and then my career was kind of downhill after that because I didn't re-sign with King, and I didn't keep getting those really big opportunities. So but that was after 50 fights or right around 50 fights. And I felt like I was just getting it. I was really just getting it then. But that was experience. Now I have 50 fights under my belt. And I have the experience of years and years of training and sparring that mostly the guys get. That's what they have by the time they're 21. I was just getting it by the time I was, I don't know, 30 something.
Christy, what is your impression? What was your impression? I know this is a little tough because you were green when you first, were introduced to Jim Martin, but you've been around now and you know so many people in the business. What do you think of his boxing acumen? Do you think if you would have been with somebody a little bit more advanced that knew what they're doing, you would have been even further along?
Oh, 100%. And I asked him. I went as far as I drew up a contract once to try to get him to divorce me, and then I was like, just let me get another trainer, and it didn't work. But I think he taught me a lot. I think he gave me good basic boxing skills, good amateur boxing skills, but like I never got to that really elite level because I didn't have someone training me. I didn't have someone I needed to spar better. I needed somebody that was going to push me to that next level.
How was it? Yeah, how was it to be promoted by Don King?
Well, it was a lot of fun. It was unbelievable. Here I am, coal miner's daughter from a town of 700 people, and being promoted by Don King, fighting in Madison Square Garden, fighting at the MGM Grand. I was on the first show that ever happened at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. And just back then, just the press conferences that he held were events and funny, and you never knew really what was going to happen. And look, he gave me the biggest opportunity that any female fighters ever had.
And he
took a chance at that time.
But at that time, nobody was going to give a woman that opportunity that he gave me.
Right now, the biggest fights are taking place in Saudi Arabia, but they're not using women. Notice that. They're not using women on any of the shows.
Well, I don't know if I should even comment on that, but
comment, Christy, comment.
I'll be honest with you. I told my guys if they get an offer to go fight over there, I'll be happy to make the fight happen. I'll be happy to send them the best team that they can possibly take with them, but I have no interest in going myself.
You're a promoter now.
Yes.
You're a promoter. Tell us a little about your promotional group.
So we have about 10 fighters right now. We have Victor Hernandez, who is an NABA and NABF featherweight champion. Looking, hopefully 2026, we get to fight for a world title. Tony Aguilar, he's fought on several of Jake Paul's undercards or the MVP promotions and one of Jake's undercards. He's going down to 130 pounds. I think it'll be a better weight class for him. Devin Parrish out of Chicago, young up and coming guy. One of my little sweetheart is Sheldon Valentone out of New Orleans. He's a little guy, 122, 5-0. He's like Hector Camacho in some ways. He's a southpaw that can box, but he's got a little pop in his punch too. And he knows how to play the crowd. He's very polite. We have a good little stable. Kimon Evans. We have a good stable. And Tobar Apochi, cruiserweight, ranked in the top 20 by the WBC. That we're looking for a world title fight for him right now.
Christy, I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and I'm not worried that you can't handle it because just from watching the movie, the documentary, and having you on here, there's nothing we can throw at you that you can't handle or be uncomfortable with. And I'm thinking of them as we're talking.
King School of Media. Remember, I came from Don King School of Media, so I'll give
there you go.
an answer.
And you're leather tough. 2 questions. 1, what was it like sparring men?
Well, I was fortunate because the guys that I sparred with, most of them worked with me. They didn't try to kill me, but yet they worked hard enough that I come away. Little Jimmy Maloney, he fought 7 world champions, by the way. He lost all of them, but he got in there with 7 world champions. He broke my nose. He ruptured my eardrum. He broke ribs. black eyes and bloody noses all the time.
The other question I'm going to ask you is, how do you feel about men competing in women's sports?
Never.
No one could speak to that better than you.
I mean, it just shouldn't happen. And I think, I think everybody has the right to, if you want to transgender, fine. But everything we do in life, we have to be, there's consequences. And a consequence for transitioning is you give up the right to compete in sports, or at least in combat sports. And I'm sorry, that's just the way it is.
I like hearing that, and I agree with that. I sparred with women before. I do martial arts now, and I train with a couple of women, and it's just not fair. That's all there is to it. It's not fair, and women can get hurt.
Well, and we have some women out there today that are out challenging guys, and I'll knock out Triple G, and I'll fight Jake Paul, and I mean, come on, that's all bullshit, and it's just so you want, searching for media attention, begging for media attention, and to me, it shows little class, and it shows just disrespect for your sport.
Yeah,
I kind of thought that. Go ahead, Jack.
If you were boxing today, I mean, who would win the trash talking contest between you and Clarissa Shields?
Man, she don't know enough words to compete with me.
Of all your fights, I'm sure you were confident you were going to win every one of them, except I'm under the impression the Layla Ali fight, you felt you were being, thrown out to the wolves in that fight. Am I correct? Did you really think you were going to win that fight, or did you think, well, maybe I have a chance? You always have to put a maybe in your head.
No, I was confident going into the fight. I felt like she had never been hit like I was
bigger than you. She was so much bigger.
Well, yes, and I honestly, now this is true. I did not realize how much bigger she was until contracts had been signed and we were at the press conference, and I was like, oh shit, this is a big woman. But I still thought, I'm going to hit her on the chin. She's never been hit by anybody. Like, I'm going to hit her. I'm going to put pressure on her. And I really, she jumped on me. She hurt me. The first right hand she threw, she hit me high on my head. And the truth is, I was done. But I wasn't in the right mindset. I started the fight thinking that she was just going to use her jab and kind of stay away and try to figure me out. And she came right out and jumped on me. And so I wasn't prepared for the game plan that she brought.
I never liked that fight from the beginning because I felt that they were using your name to build her up. And I just thought it was one of them weight bully things where she was just younger, bigger. It was just more her time than your time. But we see that boxing is replete with stories like that. Let me ask you this, Christy. When you entered the Tough Man contest, you never thought about being a boxer.
Never.
Then you had success. I think you said you won 3 fights in that, and then you had a couple offers.
Right. So I won the Tough Man contest a couple times, and then about the time I was graduating from college, the promoter, while I was in college, had some professional fights, and just again, never thinking that boxing was going to be my career.
But you said, I think you said in the documentary, I forget what point it was, but you said you were hooked and you were bitten, you had the bug. Tell us about that, because people that never did this sport, they just don't understand how it can be like a drug and be so addictive.
Oh, it's the worst drug in the world, especially when you start knocking people out. So I loved the reaction I got when I did the Tough Man a couple times, and then I started knocking people out in the Tough Man, and then that really just, I always say, got the hook in me a little deeper. And then I had the first pro fight, which I was really just doing to tell people that I had done it. It ended in a draw, and when I did the rematch just a month later, and I knocked the girl out. I mean, 8-ounce gloves, knocked her out. They could have counted to 15, and she would still been down. I was hooked 100%. It's a crazy drug. It's an adrenaline rush that you can't explain.
Yeah, Chrissy, you've always had, I could tell, a lot of respect for boxing history because I remember in the 1990s, the early 1990s, in Canastota, you sitting at the same table with Gene Fulmer, Willie Pep Archie. I know I would be at that table at the end. Shame on me for not talking to you more, hanging out with Willie Pep and those guys. But you're a major part of boxing history, whether you realize it or not. Even though there were some women boxers before you, none really achieved your fame. But more importantly, none were as legitimate as you were. You were a legitimate fighter. It wasn't a gimmick of you just being a woman fighter. You were a real fighter. You could really fight. You were really good,
Thank you.
in that sense. And what was your biggest thrill in the sport?
Oh my goodness. So many cool things have happened. Fighting in Madison Square Garden, definitely up there. Being the Grand Marshal for the Induction Hall of Fame in 1996, definitely up there. And I was being promoted by Don King, fighting under Tyson. My career was, male or female fighters, at least during my time, would have loved to have had my career.
No,
Christy, go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, well, we're basically wrapping up with Christy. So Frank, you could close.
Okay, Christy, two things. One, what the hell did it feel like when you came out of that house after that son of a bitch shot you and stabbed you and you hit the key button and it was his Corvette and not your car?
So I was like, oh my God, because I had two choices. One, to go back in the house and get the right keys, or just go to the middle of the road. And thank God I just went to the middle of the road, because the first car went by me, the second car picked me up. By the time that we had got turned around, the first car realized it was me, so he turned around just on the next street to come back. He said Jim Martin was in the front yard in his underwear looking for me. So it was so close that I didn't have much time of getting away.
The person that drove you to the hospital, are you still in contact with them?
Absolutely. His name is Rick Cole, and he's my angel forever. He just, when we showed the screening, we had the screening in Orlando. He and his husband came to the screening, and I've been to dinner with them. I message with them all the time. So yeah, and now I moved back to Apopka, so I'm just around the corner from them. I'll be spending more time with them for sure.
Very nice. Okay, for those of you who haven't seen the movie Christy, it's must-see viewing. Must-see viewing. Great movie, And Christy, thanks for coming on, sharing.
And you know what,
story.
Jack? And I said this. I think Sydney Sweeney, her performance in that movie is every bit as good as Robert De Niro's in Raging Bull.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Christy, I think she did an unbelievable job.
I think so too, and I just hope that when nomination and awards start rolling around, that people are going to overlook the damn American Jeans commercial and the this and the that
and the politics and all that malarkey.
Yeah, I mean, who gives a shit? This is an actress. And that's what I tell people. Like, you're not hurting her really. She's going to go into another role. When you don't see the movie because you don't like her, you're hurting me. She was me. And so go see the movie, and she deserves it. She took a chance on a role when she could have had hundreds of others. She chose this role, which wasn't easy.
Do you have a relationship with her, Christy? Are you still tight?
Tight I would not say, but I text with her every now and then. She answers. She lives in Key West, and I'm down in Florida. So she told me I could come to her house, and we'll see. I might take her up on that.
Okay. The great Christy Martin. Christy, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for coming on, Christy. Nice meeting you.
Anytime, you guys. Anytime. I love talking boxing. So if somebody falls out, give me a call.
And if you want to ever contact me for a couple of your fighters to come on the show before they have a meaningful fight, we'll be glad to have them on as a guest.
Absolutely.
Just, get in touch. All the best,
Absolutely.
Christy.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Good night.
Thanks for coming on, hon.
Yes, sir.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night. The great Christy Martin on there. What a great guest. What an inspiring
She has a great personality,
movie.
Jack. She really does.
What an inspiring movie. And again, for those who haven't seen it, I mean, this is a real life story. This isn't fiction. This isn't Hollywood stuff. What happened in the movie. And it's a tough movie to watch at times, but it's very inspirational at the end.
Jack, did Jim Martin ever fight?
Jim Martin, I'm not sure about Jim Martin, like what his deal was exactly. You'd have to go to Box Rec. He was a small-time trainer.
I know when I came out of that movie, I wanted to cripple his. I wanted to cripple him.
And on that note, we'll say goodnight to everyone. We hope you enjoyed the show, having on an exceptional guest. And for Frank Laterzo and myself, see you all next week.
Thanks for watching.